I'm Ronald Clodfelter. I'm 72 years old, and I'm former principal here at Deerfield High School.
Tell us a little bit about your history before you came to Deerfield. Where were you? What school were you at?
Well, I started teaching actually in 3 years in Chicago, south side of Chicago area. And we moved down here, and I taught 1 year in Miami, and then came and taught middle school social studies at Lauderdale Lakes Middle School. And then I became an assistant principal at several schools, and was asked to come to Deerfield Middle School in 1985. And I was principal at Deerfield Middle in 1985. And then the opportunity came to come to the high school in 1988, and I was thrilled. I really wanted to get into high school, and came here, and I was here until 1996. And then the superintendent had the idea at that time that 5 years was enough to be in one school, that we were going to move you. So they did. I went to Coral Springs High School for my final 4 years, and I retired in 2000.
Great. Tell us a little bit about what the high school looked like and what the culture was at the high school when you first came.
Well, the high school, walking in this morning, quite frankly, I haven't been here for quite a while, but the high school basically was just this building, the main building. Of course, the gymnasium was here, the football, the fields, and whatever. But the science building was not here at that time. The extra building, classroom building on the south side of the school was not here. The swimming pool was here, but basically the inside brought back a lot of memories this morning when I walked in. Mm-hmm.
And did you have a full 4 years at the time that you were here of high school?
Did I have what? I'm sorry.
The school was a 4-year high school.
The school was definitely a 4-year high school. It was a comprehensive high school. It was a school that had unbelievable, and I say this emphatically, unbelievable amount of potential. Wonderful students came here. It just needed to have the community, the students, everybody buy into this was really a good school. And our programs were second to none in any program that you would find in the county.
Were you here when the magnet program started?
I was here at the inception of the magnet programs.
Tell us about
we were trying to find a way to make this school really, truly special. And I went to bat, tried to get this magnet program in here because it would attract students who really would maybe go toward a career. And we applied for this program through the county, and I think the county saw that this school would really flourish with a program like this, and so we were able to bring this program in. Of course, this program takes quite a bit of space. So as a result, we had to close down the top half of the library, move the library to the first floor, and then come and design this particular studio. And it was a wonderful time. I mean, it was so much fun because you knew what the outcome was going to do for students in this school, in the program.
What program was
it? It was the TV and radio broadcast, and the second part was print journalism. So we had 2 parts to the program.
What about the IB program?
IB program, I can't say enough about that program. I was here when the first class graduated. The first students graduated from that program, and I would highly recommend that program to anybody that could handle it. It's a worldwide program. It's a program that students earn college credit. We had students graduate that year, the first year, with up close to 2 years college credit already. And it just makes you look at the world in a different way. As we know today, as we see in our politics and we see in our news, the world is so tied together. We are not isolated. And this really gives that program, I highly recommend it. It is just a wonderful program. And I wasn't here at the inception of that program. I think it had started 2 or 3 years prior to me coming, but I got to see the first graduating class come and then kind of follow those students after they went to college and see the success that they had. And it just was, it was really, really nice to see.
You were here during the inception of the Butler Scholarship Program.
I was.
Tell us about
Yes.
that.
What a, I mean, I get excited every time I think about that. Here I am, a new principal coming in 1988, and they said something about a Butler Scholarship, and I had no idea what that was and what it was going to be and what it entailed. And in 1990, let's see, and the land sold in 1988, I believe it was, the year that I came in, and it was a scholarship that the Butlers had said an endowment they wanted to give the school because they loved the school. They loved the children of Deerfield High, Deerfield in general. They worked with them. They did all kinds of community things with the children. And from what I understand, the Butlers had 3 children of their own, but none of them, 2 of them died before kindergarten, and the third one died like a month after birth. So they didn't have any children of their own to come into high school, but that didn't keep them from loving children and loving and wanting them to have a better life in Deerfield. And so we got word that the Butler Scholarship was coming. And to go back a little bit on the history of that, it's kind of fun because when they made their will, it was estimated at that time that the Butler Scholarship would bring in less than $1 million. I'm sorry, the land would sell for less than $1 million, and the school would get 1/3 of that figure, approximately. So we're talking maybe $250,000, $300,000 in scholarship, and everybody, oh my word, that is just so wonderful. Well, that was back in '75. However, the Butlers farmed that land. The heirs were farming that land until 1985. And in 1985, they stopped farming, and just like every other parcel of land in South Florida, it kind of got taken over by developers. And instead of selling for a little bit less than $1 million, that land sold for $23 million. So you can imagine, now our 1/3, the school's 1/3 still remained, the figure. So 1/3 of $23 million is not $230,000 or $50,000 or $300,000. It now became $6.3 million to give to students who graduated from this school, help to go on to college. And obviously with that, the problems of how do you distribute it came. But what a wonderful problem to have. That was my first year here. I don't know if you want me to go into the particulars, how we set up our committees and so forth. But we got represented. We wanted to make sure that we did what the Butlers wanted us to do with the money. They said that we want kids with good moral character. We want them with academic prowess, that achieved in school. We want them, they have to be graduates of Deerfield High. We want to give them help to go on. And financial need was an issue there also. So we developed our guidelines around that. To do that, we set a committee. We got a committee of people who were willing to really put in a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of nights after school, a lot of nights for the community. But we brought the community in, we brought parents in, we brought student representation, teachers, our administrators got in, and then Southeast Bank, which is, I'm not even sure who's taken over their bank now, but Southeast Bank at that time held the money. They were the people who handled the money. So we were all a part of sitting there and coming up with the guidelines to make it fair. First of all, to make it fair to all students in this school, but also to make it go in line with what the Butlers wanted. And we developed our guidelines.
Do you know how much land there was and where it was?
Yes, I do. There was about 400 acres, and that 400 acres was located just south of the Sawgrass Expressway and just north of 441. It ironically is in Coral Springs. Mm-hmm.
And how were the first students, tell me your experience when the first students were selected and how many there were, if you can remember.
Well, I can. The first year we gave monies, I believe was 90-91, the graduating class of 90-91, because it had to generate. Let me go back 1 second and tell you that this committee looked at several different types of ways to distribute it, a fair way to distribute it. We first of all looked to see how do you judge moral character. That's what the Butlers wanted. But we made the students who were applying for this, we made them hand in 2 letters of recommendation from the community or teachers, and just give us some idea that they were good citizens. We also looked at their academic record. So if you did very well in school, you were eligible to get more monies than if you weren't doing well in school. We looked at their financial need. We actually had the government, they had to send in their papers, and then we got a score back, and then we put that on a sliding scale. That was part of it. We looked at, first of all, they had to be a graduate of Deerfield High. Now, when I say that, they didn't have to be a current graduate. We actually went back, and students who had graduated in the past were eligible to come back and apply for a scholarship. So you asked me how many the first year. We had 109 graduates that received money, and I believe we had 134 alumni that came back and received money. Now, can you cut this? I don't even know where it is. Okay, but let me just, sorry. But there was 134, I believe, came back and asked to be considered for the scholarship. And we looked at them the same way. Many of them were already in college. We had some coming back. One of our custodians graduated from Deerfield High many, many years ago, and she decided she wanted to go to take a class. And she came back, and we gave her some help to go. And but as long as you could prove that you were a graduate and you had been entered into and approved to enter into 2-year school or a 4-year certified school, we considered them for help.
How much were the scholarships, do you remember?
Well, the scholarship, we only used interest. The principal, it was designed to keep the principal intact. I don't know if that's still the case, but at that time, the principal was not being touched. The interest accrued on the principal was distributed yearly. That first year, we gave out $445,000 in scholarship. I have to tell you, being a principal and going to class night, that's when we give our scholarships. And this school, historically, the kids have gotten a lot of scholarships. There's always been a pretty good financial need. There's always been really, really top students. Anyway, well, you can imagine that first night at class night, and all of those kids sitting out there, and we called them all up on the scholarship, on the Butler Scholarship, and here's 109 students up on the stage, and I recall this. And every class night after that, I made a point of saying, I want each of you to look up, because up there somewhere there's 2 people sitting there smiling as broadly as they can and as proud as they can be of you students. And so it's an emotional thing for me, because that was what was happening at the time. And many of the students truly didn't know the impact of what this was going to do for them. You know, they knew that they were going to get help, but and they were eligible for help for 4 years. So yeah, they had to come back every year and reapply and show their need, and to also, if they were going to college, they had to come back and show us that they were succeeding in college. And whatever their grade point average was in college was plugged into our formula, and some of them got less, some of them got, so it wasn't a 4-year college scholarship automatic. They had to keep their grades up. One thing we tried to do as a scholarship committee was we always felt that students, the more they were involved in school, the better they did in school. And so we required, in order to get full credit in that particular area, that particular area of evaluation, would be the number of activities that you're involved in. And we required them to get full credit to be involved in 3 activities at school. And it was unbelievable how it increased the number of activities and involvement of the students in the school at that time.
There was an additional parcel that was sold later. Tell
Yes.
us about that.
Well, the additional parcel was sold, and that parcel, I believe, sold in the neighborhood of $3 million, and the school received a third of that money to add to the scholarship fund. So we got approximately $1 million into the fund, and so therefore the total fund from the Butler Scholarship was $7.4 and thereabouts, $7.4 million. It was, at the time, I was told by the Secondary Schools Association that this was the largest scholarship fund endowment of any public school in the United States. Now, that makes Deerfield High special.
The Butlers also endowed Deerfield High School with some other monies for some other equipment and facilities. Tell us about that.
Yes, they sure did. Prior to this, we had, from what I understand, I wasn't here then, but I understand that the football field had a pretty poor speaker system on it. They gave a brand new PA system. The parking was hit and miss, and if you've ever been to Deerfield High on a Friday night, you know you need parking. for the football games and basketball games, but they provided dollars to provide additional parking in the school. They they also in 1985 came up with they wanted to help the students once again, not only of the school but of the city. And at that time, I don't believe the city had a public pool, and they donated $300,000 to construct a new Olympic-sized swimming pool for the school, and stipulating that during the summers and whenever the city kids could use it, they could teach them swimming and so forth. So this was all donated on, on the side of, other than the big endowment.
Tell us about your relationship with Mr. Charlie.
Oh, I love Mr. Charlie. I can tell you one story. They had the Cracker Day parade. At that time it was called Cracker Day. I think it's Founders Day now, but it was called Crackers Day Parade. And I was asked as principal to ride in an open air convertible, and I said, I'll only do it for one, if you get Charlie to ride with me. Because he was my custodian at the middle school. I love Charlie. When I came to the high school, every game, Charlie would be there. He'd come up and with his smile and laugh, and it was just, a good relationship. So he agreed to ride with me. Well, it was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made, because as we were going down the parade route, nobody recognized me, but everybody yelled, Charlie, Charlie. They loved Charlie. And he just, once again, he's a quality person. I still see him once in a while, and just fond memories of the gentleman. He is probably the greatest supporter of this school. I don't know if he's ever missed an athletic event. He's, just, this is his school.
If you can remember, what were a couple of the highlights of your time being principal here, other than the Butler Scholarship Fund, which I'm sure was right up there with them? But I'd like to know what was some of the highlights you experienced.
Well, certainly, once again, I'm going to say the Butler was a real highlight. But we had, developing this program was a major highlight. The Academy of Finance program that we had, where we taught kids about business, and a wonderful highlight of that. Obviously, I was an athlete in high school, and loved athletics. So there was no better place in the world to be than Deerfield High School, because our athletics were just off the charts in almost every area. And
stop there for a second, because the bell's
okay.
Well, you covered everything really well with the Butler Scholarship. I went through this, and it looks like.
Yeah, I forgot one thing that I couldn't remember the one thing that they gave the extra money for.
Ask you again about where that land was, because when you told us the first time. Go ahead. Were there some major disappointments that you experienced during your principal time here, or some things that you wanted to accomplish that never got accomplished?
Well, obviously, when you think that your population of a school is anywhere from 1,600 to 2,800, there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. There's some things that happen that you're certainly not happy with, but there's other things that I can tell you that the real high things that I had far outweighed the low things in the school. As far as pointing to any real disappointments, I accomplished what I wanted to. Don't misinterpret that everything was accomplished when I left, but I felt I was moving toward that, and the principals who followed me picked right up on that, and Deerfield High is a wonderful school. As far as I know, we did some things that we're really proud of, and I think curriculum-wise, we had some of the finest curricular offerings of any school. One thing that I'm going to go to what made me really proud. How about that? One thing that really made me proud about the students here, a couple things, many things, but these students, I've been in a lot of different schools, and many of the schools I've been to, when you did something for them, they viewed it as, well, we expect that. One thing I always felt at Deerfield High School, when I did something for the students at Deerfield High School, out of the ordinary, they not only they didn't feel that I owed that to them, they were very appreciative for it. And that comes from home, that comes from the way they were brought up, and that was always one difference that was easy to kind of spot in my educational experiences.
What would you say is the biggest difference between the education system and or the students' reaction to the education system from the time that you started teaching school to the time that you left?
Oh my gosh, it changed a lot. When I first started teaching, I think the students had less distractions to deal with, quite frankly. The home life was probably more inherent within the students themselves. And that's not a criticism of the parents of the 70s, 80s, but things became where the 2 and 3 parents had to do 2 and 3 jobs, quite frankly, and they had less control, less face time with their students, and as a result, it showed in behavior. It showed in getting homework done at night. It showed in being able to go to the young man or young lady's basketball game and watch them play because they were working. It's all in the family issue. I think that probably, to me, was really an important factor. Of course, drugs came into play, which certainly didn't help the situation. But, people talk about schools and they talk about the problems in schools and so forth. Schools, any school in this district, if a student wants to go and get a good education, they can get a good education. It takes their willingness to really learn, really go, and work hard and become there's a certain responsibility they have to give too. I don't know, other than that, how it's changed. I mean, it certainly has. The electronic age, which I kind of retired prior to the electronic age. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got the Twitter accounts and things, and information travels so fast. And if there's a problem in this classroom, all of a sudden everybody throughout the school knows it. So there's a lot of things that have changed, but I'm just thankful that I had the opportunity to work with students when I did.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about Deerfield High and the time that you were here?
Well, You know, I briefly mentioned the athletic part of it, and I think that I also need to mention that we had a wonderful band program, chorus program, uh, and we had one of the best art programs in maybe in the nation. I mean, those kids performed unbelievably well. We had, of course, the International Baccalaureate program. I've already mentioned that, but that really was a top flight program that really prepared kids for the world. Um, Other than that, like I said, the athletics, we had many of our students go on to college on athletic scholarships. Our big challenge was to make sure that they did what they needed to do in the classroom in order to succeed in college. At one time, athletes went to college and truly didn't have to, you know, have the greatest education to succeed. But colleges have changed. You know, right now, students that are going to go on an athletic scholarship better have a good background, better have a good educational background to go back on. And that was one thing that was a challenge for us, and we worked hard to make sure that those students were ready to go. You know, just because you get a scholarship doesn't mean that you're going to succeed. And just because you have the Butler money sitting there and you can get help to go to college doesn't mean you'll succeed. You have to prepare yourself to a certain level to succeed in college. And I've seen many. Some of the most proudest things is I do a lot of shopping in Deerfield. I just live across the border into Palm Beach County. And I come to Deerfield to shop, and I'll be going down into Home Depot, and somebody will recognize me, you know, after 20 years. And I look at them, and I don't particularly recognize them because they've changed, you know. But once they tell me their names, it brings back good memories, and I just think it's nice that they would still recognize me and tell me how they're doing. They've got a couple little children, and it's a wonderful experience. Truthfully, for me, I had the best job in the world.